Alright peeps, welcome to Kickstarter Radio 102.4. I've not been on my channel recently and this video will explain why. Essentially this is a part 2 of the collapse of global shipping, and you all know what that means at the minute, don't you? Because you're all aware of the news, probably on all of your games that you've backed, and everyone's latest updates talking about tariffs and stuff like that. But let me add to this that no one wants to talk about, and it is seriously the collapse of China. I'll explain a couple of things. What the industry is trying to do by suing Donald Trump's government, which is complete BS. I'll explain why that I disagree with the sue, and why I'll explain why it's going to get kicked out in court if it gets there. Number 2, I'll talk about why board games are just not going to get made in China anymore. Number 3, the tactics of assembling the game in another country and smuggling it into America. Well, I'll explain why that won't happen. And number 4, I'll explain what needs to happen before the board game industry can get back on its feet. Because we're coming into a window of darkness, and as they're saying in China right now, the sky has fallen. Alright. Now, a lot of this information comes from this Chinese YouTube channel called China Observer, where they're looking at a lot of the social feeds in China and getting first-hand accounts of what's happening in the country. Now, obviously, it's recently been overloaded with the effects that tariffs have had, but this goes way back in 2024 when the housing investment crisis happened, because in China you could only invest your money in the housing market, and it became an embarrassment. There was more houses in China that were constructed to house the entire world's population that needs to buy a house. It was ridiculous. They just made too many houses. They've actually been collapsing a lot of these, but the big debt bubble burst and they all went bankrupt. So millions and millions of homeowners lost their savings that they have been saving up for decades. That has had a gigantic effect on China, and the consumer market is dead and buried because they are so frightened. Now, they're basically keeping money in their house and they're not basically buying things. They are very scared because did the government come in and help them? No, it didn't. In fact, the government, historically, does not care if anyone goes into bankruptcy or in plight. So it is quite an embarrassment that's going on there, because there is signs going on in China of an uprising where they're saying that the only way out is democracy, which of course will put you in prison if you suggest such an idea. Anyway, so first of all, let's go to the idea that the board game Western industry is taking it up with Donald Trump's government to try to sue them. This is spearheaded by Jamie Stegmaier, and there has been a support from, I think, 64 companies in the board game industry. Well, first of all, when Trump on April 2nd put the tariffs out, over 84 countries came to the table to debate. You have to excuse me. To debate, and their tariffs got set to 10%. In fact, the only country that did not want to talk to the Trump government was China. And in fact, they put tariffs up on US goods. And that was the start of the trade war, when China did not come to the table. So it actually is China that, because this is what the judge will say, if China had come to the table, the tariff would be 10%. So you can't blame that on Trump. If the arrogance of the Chinese believe they can continue their economy without the US as a customer, that arrogance is the reason for the tariff war. Simple. Now, most of what this channel is showing you here is what's being shared across the social feeds in China. And there is a massive, massive, massive collapse happening in the country. Now, first of all, the economy was in tatters from when everyone lost their savings. It was getting worse as well because the Chinese worker was getting to a point where they were getting $15 an hour in their factories. In fact, it was being said that a Mexican worker is more educated than a Chinese and does double the amount of work they do at a cheaper pay per hour. So essentially, the Chinese workers were getting overpaid for what work they were doing anyway. It was going horrendous. Now, as the government owns everything, all these businesses were renting their factories. In fact, they were renting cars, they were renting their houses. And as everything has ballsed up in the country, they have lost everything. I mean, they are going back to the villages they originally came from. You know, not only did they put a massive tariff on the United States, but a lot of the agriculture depends on items from the United States. You can't just block gas and oil. You know, that goes specifically to fertilization of your crops. And banning food from the USA was crazy because China have had an incredible drought to the start of the year, and a lot of their agriculture has died. And you can't simply turn to another country and buy all this food that the US would have sold you, because world food does not act like that. There's no surplus of food from any country. In fact, I think Brazil was the only country that offered it, and it was so small it wouldn't have even replaced the domestic crash of crops that happened this year. So food prices have spiked in China as well. So cost of living on the up, and a lot of people losing their jobs. Now, the problem with board game industry is you're paying the factory to make it, but normally what happens with manufacturing is you pay 50% and you pay the 50% on delivery. Now, a lot of what I'm hearing with these Chinese owners is they are running for the door with the money, not even paying their employers. And they're leaving all their stock on the factory shelf, and all of the materials, all of the machinery is rented anyway. That will get collected. I've even heard of factories that paid for the manufacturing machines, and they basically pawned them off when they were closing everything down. So, and the other thing is, the boats that leave China, they are... I mean, this video here, for example, it talks about shipments cancelled. Now, basically, if you look at that ship on this photo here, 60% of that ship is US bound. Let's say 40% of that will get dropped off in Europe. Well, that boat is not going to leave if US says we don't want it. The whole ship will not leave if the US aren't paying for it. And if the Europeans want the boat, well, guess what? The price of shipping, would it have doubled? In fact, they're saying that the price of shipping has come down, but that the boat will not leave unless it's full. So you need a ship that's full of EU. So there's going to be a delay if you manage to do it. So that's going to be interesting. Now, I've heard that there's this idea of waiting it out, like they hope this tariff thingy will get fixed. There is no sign of that whatsoever. Were has this confidence that this will fly over, because there's zero confidence for that. In fact, they have been trying to move factories into Vietnam, but the Trump government is making sure Vietnam register everything they manufacture in their country so that they can detect this Mickey Mouse deception that the Chinese are doing. In fact, I've heard from China that the biggest thing that the CEO of these companies want to do is move into Mexico, because then they can hopefully get into the USMCA trade deal and go tariff-free, is what they hope. So they're going to be bringing manufacturing over to the Americas, and that is going to have another catastrophic effect on it. So delay-wise, let's say Chinese board game manufacturer wants to move to Mexico. Okay, they're going to put all their manufacturing equipment on one of these containers. It's roughly, I'll tell you how much it costs. One container going to America is $1,000. One container is $1,000. It's that cheap. So they can move all of it over. It's 60 days to the Americas. Then you've got to ship it down to your place in Mexico, assuming you've got a factory space rented, or you'll have to create one. Factories go up pretty much in no time. They could be back up and running in, I'd say, 60%, and then they could import all of the materials from China to kind of make sure it gets manufactured. But then, you know, if you're bringing in the plastic, as long as it's manufacturing minis, for example, or you're bringing in the paper and the inks, and then you're printing the paper and the card in Mexico, that then will be classed as manufactured in Mexico. So that's one way of getting through it. So you're looking at a delay, and it will just have to be made in a different country. There's no way, Jose, it's going to come from China. As simple as that. And having all these games in a warehouse in China, because that stuff's never going to leave China. How are you going to get it out without the tariff on it? It's simple as that. It is just not going to leave. And the whole point of this is, if I go back to my special programs, the collapse of global shipping was about this idea that the New World Order will break the safety of shipping, and global shipping will disappear. And this is effectively inevitable. If you go to any geopolitician on YouTube, Peter Zion is one I think is particularly the best. They will have said this is coming by 2028. In China, there's going to be a massive population event, and demographically, their population is going to have there's going to be a bomb. It's going to be a de-civilization event, and at least what Trump is doing, they're doing a kind of a light manufacturing reset where they're getting stuff over, and geopoliticians are actually happy that this is happening, because it's not like the government is forcing companies to do it. They're naturally moving over to the US to avoid the tariffs. So this has been a way of softly making them put manufacturing in North America, and this was going to happen anyway, because when the US pulls the ships out of the water and they make the oceans more dangerous again, then it's going to go like that. So there's going to be a big delay, and the country will probably be Mexico, that's making board games. is what it's coming out of Mexico, coming out of China. This is the country to move to if you want to keep exports going up high. There is that. Now let me just move this around. So basically, I cannot do a video because I'm effectively a person that might convince you to back something. Sure, I'm just like a guy in a pub, and if I talk passionately about a board game, I might influence you to back a game, right? I think if you see something, I wouldn't dismerch you from $1 backing it. I mean, that's safe as you can get. But essentially, I've backed stuff, or like I've not $1 pledged it. I'm back stuff, and I know there's a serious problem with that. Because if they give half the money to the Chinese manufacturer, I'm crossing my fingers that guy's relocating his company before he starts making it. Because if it gets made in China, there's no way, Jose, that is going to make any kind of tariff. You remember the minimum tariff Trump put on China was like 63%. There's like a 20% add-on because China are not helping with the fentanyl. They've openly said we are not helping with the fentanyl situation, so that slapped another 20% on. So the acts of the CCP have started this trade war, and why every other country in the world is coming to the table to talk speaks volumes. And so yeah, you're not going to be able to sue the Trump government. So yeah, we need to see this manufacturing come to the Americas, and then it needs to come across, of course, with low tariffs or zero tariffs into the United States. And if you're around the world and you're a board game fan, it'll all just have to ship over from the Americas. Excuse me. All right, so there's going to be a relining of the board game industry. I think while this is going on, I definitely would, if you're a board game developer, I would definitely put things on ice. I wouldn't give any money to any manufacturer in China. I would delay your manufacturing until things sort out. I don't think the tariff situation is going to get fixed. I honestly think that the end of shipping from China is here. It really is here. Because the Chinese economy is already going downhill fast. I mean, it's free falling, and with let me just go to precipitation. With tariffs on top of the worse economy, I mean, they're saying it's worse than when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, no one was working, so it's worse than that. Do go to China Observer YouTube channel and have a look at some of these things. It's just incredible. Massive protests across the country. Trans-Pacific routes falling apart. Factories closing left, right, and centre. Look, there is a bigger bomb than tariffs. The economy, it's not just the tariffs that's killing things. There's more stuff happening. The president of China will not kneel to the USA. You know, some of the big brands in China are collapsing. So it goes on and on. It's like, and this is why if you've got money and you can pay for relocation, you're going to do it. It's the answer to the cancer, or what they're calling a virus. Remember, the country is saying the sky has fallen. The CCP aren't going to do anything to help us. And yeah, if I can pick one for you, it would be this one. It's getting worse where the empty containers pile up. Let's just have a little You can see here where you've got people from the port that work there. You've got workers from the actual places. They actually go to each port, the biggest shipping ports around China here, showing you the giant empty ships, the empty ports, the giant containers that are all getting sent back to the manufacturing warehouses. They're all getting sent back. So they're not even staying in the port because they charge rent and stuff like that. So it's all being empty. So yeah, it's an incredible video. I will link this one down below for you to check out, and it'll give you kind of a sample of what's happening here. But I'm just giving you my opinion of what's happening after doing a lot of research on this, and it's kind of a follow-up video to what I've called the end of world shipping in my special program. So this is part 2 to that. But yes, mega manufacturing collapse in China, economy collapse in China, and there's going to need a relocation of manufacturing to a place like Mexico, and it could possibly be happening by the end of summer. It might be set up in place, so we'll just have to see how agile they are. And of course, this was always in the plan for the New World Order to make sure manufacturing becomes local to the countries they supply, like nearshoring is what's going to happen, and be less reliant on China. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. So basically, I'm not doing any videos. I can't basically talk about any Kickstarter game or GameFound game because I don't want you backing stuff and losing your money. I totally think you might want to $1 pledge stuff, but at the end of the day, peeps, I don't want anyone to lose their money. I already feel like my money in certain pledges are already, it's in jeopardy. We'll say that much. And what's going to happen to Gen Con this year if all the board game developers realise that none of their games are coming from China? Is Gen Con going to be completely cancelled? Is potentially what's going to happen. So, yeah. It's not just happening. It's not just board games in America. This is affecting Europe. And I think Donald Trump, when he's negotiating his tariffs with everybody, he is putting in plans that these countries also put tariffs up on China. So we've already kind of seen Europe put fees up, UK put tariffs up on China, and it's just going to get worse and worse for them. So manufacturing is 100% going to move. And empty container stack 7 layers high, setting a new record. Maximum number of empty containers can be stacked is usually much lower, and you'll see some incredible pictures here from you know, that you'll get in this video. So yeah, of all the ports and all the ships that are not there, and all the cranes upwards in the sky, meaning they're closed. The cranes just aren't using. We've got some good footage recently of all the cranes being up in all the ports. There's just no action happening. And yeah, it's all educational, we'll say. Yeah. So the ship's not going to go unless it's full. If it's going, it only can. The margins for profit are so small that if any costs go up, the ship doesn't leave. Simple as that. Peeps, yeah, if you didn't check out my collapse of global shipping, this is more evidence and the consequences for board games. This is that green light that the manufacturers they know that they need to pull out to. They need to put their manufacturing in a different country, and this is absolutely needed for the New World Order. So there we go, peeps. I hope you found this interesting. No one else is talking about this, of course, because I'm shining light on the huge negativity of the industry. But also, hopefully, the green light that it will fix itself, hopefully by the end of this year. But don't be full pledging anything. You keep your $1 pledge on, keep that nice and secure, and be deeply concerned about anything you're expecting to get shipped, because it's just not going to get shipped from China. And if you look at your games on your shelf right now, they're the last games on your shelf that are going to be made in China, because everything else is going to be made somewhere else, most likely Mexico. So on that bombshell, peeps, thank you so much for watching. I will be back when things sort themselves out. Trust me. But if my channel goes off for longer, you know why. This video should explain everything. I don't want to influence anybody looking at anything good, so yeah. On that bombshell, thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Lipstickpaddy. This is Kickstarter Radio 102.4. Ooh, it's looking very dark, isn't it? And please do check out the channel of China Observer. There'll be a link in the description of this video. So thanks for watching. Take care, and if you want to put any comments down below, please put them down. I'll look forward to reading them. So yeah, take care, you stay safe, and bye for now. Bye bye.